There's a musical fallacy that is spreading across the guitar-related internet sites. And in this lesson, I'd like to try to make sure that you are immunized against its negative effects. The fallacy is that a given song has one specific strumming pattern that should be tabbed out and then learned stroke for stroke. Something like this: down, down, up, up, down, down, up, down, down, down. You probably know the sort of thing I mean. Here's an example taken from a popular guitar tab site. This is put there as the strumming pattern for the Oasis song Wonderwall. I could probably spend the whole of this lesson ranting about all the things I feel are wrong with this. But instead, let's just summarise. Firstly, it's just so hard to learn to strum following a pattern laid out like this. If you don't believe me, rewind the video to the diagram and spend a few minutes trying. Secondly, even if after hours of painful persistence you do manage to duplicate the pattern exactly as shown in the diagram, you'll be greatly disappointed when you listen back to the record and hear that this exact pattern isn't quite what is actually being played. Most importantly, the reason you won't hear this pattern is that the whole idea of a fixed strumming pattern is basically wrong. So my task for this lesson is to help you develop your strumming in a way that is 1, easier to learn, 2, will help you sound more like the record, and 3, is grounded in sound principles of musicianship. Let's go with a 3-step process for you to apply. Now, to demonstrate, I'm going to continue to use the intro to Wonderwall as an example. For those of you who don't know the song, here are the chords. The first step is to listen to the record and determine the underlying rhythmic feel of the song. This is a very important concept, so let's explain what exactly we mean by underlying rhythmic feel. Most of the songs we listen to have an underlying rhythm that falls into one of these 3 basic categories. Don't be too put off if the notation means nothing to you. Actually, the most important thing here are the lines beneath the notes, where I have shown the way I vocalize these rhythmic feels. Let's demonstrate. The underlying strumming pattern for an 8-beat feel looks something like this. And I vocalize that as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The underlying strumming pattern for a 12-beat feel or triplet feel looks like this. And I vocalize that as 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now sometimes that'll be in 12/8, which is what I'm showing you there, but very commonly you'll also see 6/8, which is exactly half that pattern. So that would be vocalized simply as 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. The underlying pattern for the 16-beat feel looks like this. And I vocalize that as 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a... So now have a quick listen to the start of Wonderwall and see if you can hear which of these three patterns is being applied. Now I'm hoping that you could hear that as a 16-beat rhythm by counting along to it 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a... So the next step is to take this underlying pattern and use it in an unmodified fashion to play along with the chords. I sometimes refer to this as scrubbing your way through a tune. Sounds like this. One E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a... The third step is to modify the pattern. This you can do simply by missing some of the strokes out of the pattern. You can also modify it by choosing different sets of strings to use from the middle pair, the bottom pair and the top pair of strings on the guitar. So starting with the scrubbing exercise, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a... I just start missing some strokes out. I also choose whether I'm playing the bass, the middle, or the treble strings. And different strokes, I pick different areas of the guitar and play them off against each other. Now with these variables, you can end up with an infinite variety of different strumming patterns, some of which will sound more or less like Noel Gallagher. So, for example, doesn't sound much like Oasis, but perhaps that does. You may want to pause the video at this stage to explore that for yourself. Now listen back to Noel Gallagher's playing and notice that he doesn't play this pattern every bar. What he does is use an underlying 16-beat pattern which he then varies in an expressive way pretty much each bar to go with the feel of the song. He does this spontaneously and according to his mood at the moment, and I firmly believe that this is the way music should be made. After all, if we want a sound that's duplicated perfectly every bar, then we might as well program a computer to generate our sound for us and let machines take over our music making. But we wouldn't want to let that happen, would we? Listening out for underlying rhythmic feels is something you will get better at the more you try it. Remember that each of the main rhythmic feels that I've mentioned here have their own subclasses, and there are also other rhythmic feels that fall outside these three main categories. But the message here is to relax any idea of there being one correct strumming pattern for a given song. And instead, learn to work with the underlying rhythmic feel of the song and create your own natural sounding strumming pattern spontaneously. Then, I promise, you will find the process of learning to strum so much easier. The only limitation on your sounding like the record will be the gap between your level of technical skill and that of the person playing the guitar on the record, and this gap can of course be reduced by practice. Most importantly, even though you may not be able to duplicate the strumming on the record, your way of strumming will sound natural and musical. And I also promise you this was never going to happen from you learning the strumming pattern from tab, stroke for stroke. See you again soon.